Hey, everybody, welcome again. We've got the CEO from J-SAS, Sase Janki, and we're going to talk about, what happened. He was recently at the Channel Next event, and he had a great reception there. And of course, compliance as a service is the game. And so let's find out what happened and where are we on to next? Sase, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Julian. How are you doing?
Great stuff. All right, let's just dig into this. So, you went to Channel Next in the East and got a really great reception out there. What was it that happened, and how did you feel?
I think it was a great session. So I came back feeling very pumped. What I'm noticing is that compliance suddenly is on every MSP's radar. And
Mm,
I believe that that's because of, recognizing that compliance is important and trying to shift away from traditional MSP stuff and add something more to their toolbox. So I was pretty excited to see the reception that was, how compliance was received. There were lots
mm,
of questions. There's a lot of misconceptions. And I think there's still some educating left for us to do, but we're up for it.
mm. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think it's kind of like it's starting to bubble up to the surface, right?
Yeah,
They're trying to do some cybersecurity protection. AI is now coming in as another challenge they're having to deal with. But
yeah,
then, compliance regulations, privacy, these are the legal frameworks, right? That
exactly.
people are putting up. And of course, there's insurance compliance as well. So at some point or another, they're all going to have to deal with this. And I think that the theme was, better sooner rather than later to kind of get ahead of that curve. But let's double click on this. What do you think are the biggest pain points, right? That that's having with compliance these days?
Right. So I'll focus on three of them. The first one is the one that we talked about a lot, which we define as really tool sprawl or
Right.
tool overload. And we talk about how, we find that clients are juggling spreadsheets, they're juggling multiple tools. Security requires many tools, and that's
Yeah.
the nature of the beast. Well, when you try to put that in the context of compliance, it's very difficult. You have to scramble to prove your security, etc. So we'll put the first one on our list is the fragmentation caused by multiple tools. The second one is audit hesitancy, or what we call some audit anxiety. Again, because you have a plethora of tools and you feel you're doing the right thing, you're unsure. So when you go to the compliance, you're not quite sure if you are going to pass the audit. So there is always hesitancy to move forward on the compliance journey. And then the third one is really inflicted by tools themselves. So it's really the lack of guidance that traditional GRC tools are providing to operators. They assume the operator or the organizations are expert at compliance and they have to figure out these tools. So what you find happen that smaller organizations who don't have a compliance department are going to abandon the program because the tools are too expensive. They're too expensive, one, and they're difficult to operationalize. We
Mm,
talk about the case study. I'll give you a quick reference here that we engage what we call a health tech firm. And they were on that journey. They bought a traditional GRC platform. They were trying to operationalize it. It became a project. So just imagine you're busy doing your work and now you have another project. So it goes without saying, they abandon it. We got involved. We were able to operationalize their SOC 2 Type 2. They got their SOC 2 Type 2 within months. They save a bunch of time and some money in the progress. So it's how you go about it. So these are the three things. The,
mm.
the tools that they're using, cost fragmentation, unsure about their security posture, and then the GRC tools themselves become very complex for them to operationalize.
Yeah, I mean, there's another thing that I heard that they're talking about when I was doing some huddles with them, and was saying, at some point, right,
Yeah,
especially when the customer has a problem, or the customer's getting an audit, or there's an insurance claim, or something catastrophic is happening that triggers the question of, well, were you compliant?
yeah,
And if it's yes, can you prove to me that
correct.
you're compliant? And it's one thing for me to tell you, hey, Sais, I'm compliant, but it's another thing for me to stand up and say, here is my proof, right?
That's
How
correct.
does your platform do this?
So that's a great question. So the way we do it, and we do it in various forms. So we often talk about two approaches: digitizing the journey from the top to the bottom, or whether you're in an audit, going from the bottom up. So if you go from the bottom up, chances are you are in front of an auditor and you're engaging in a process to retrospectively talk about your security. So we have these data connectors that would go out and collect evidence on your behalf. And they are automated in a sense that you can fulfill your audit process. Now, again, not everything is automatable. So we would come in with our compliance as a service functions and services to help that organization demonstrate proof. We would look and see where are their compliance gaps before they go to the audit process. We help plug those holes. We'll provide advice, etc. So it's not just dealing with the tool. It's taking our platform and we'll back that by our service to make sure that you're successful. And a lot of customers are asking for this. Yesterday I had a conversation with a potential client and they said, well, I want to make sure that when I buy this solution that it works for me. So I want engagement. So nowadays, more and more organizations are asking for that service together with the platform. And if you're not in the market to do that, then you're going to miss the game. So that's how we operate. That's how Protect
Mm.
Suite operates,
Yeah.
really.
I mean, it's moving from a checkbox, right, to an actually you better prove the stuff, right? And
That's
it's
correct.
not just for fun either, right? When
Yeah,
you're following compliance, it actually helps your company to become better at what they do.
exactly.
But so let's double click on the Protect Suite, your solution, right? So
Yeah.
of course, there's lots of solutions out there, but what makes yours? What separates you from them?
Good. So what separates me from the pack? So the traditional GRC, or most of them that are coming up now, they focus on dashboards, showing scorecard of what's going on within your environment. That itself doesn't really lend itself to someone implementing a program.
Mm,
So what we've done, we've looked at industry's framework. We talk about SOC 2, NIST, HIPAA, what the case might be, GDPR, PIPEDA, and we've digitized the process within the platform. So we allow the companies to begin their journey with our platform.
right.
Once they've begun the journey and we onboard them, we understand what frameworks they're engaged with. We make sure they have the controls. We take them through the risk management process. So we guide them step by step. So it's a guided approach to implementing a compliance program. And once you have that and you go to your audit, we rinse and repeat to make sure that you're doing this every day between audits. So it's an engaging model. It's not selling a
Mm.
platform and walking away.
Got it. So, I mean, give me a real world example here. How do you guys make a difference?
So the first thing we do, we start out with an assessment. So let's say you're an MSP, you want to engage with us, you don't know where to start. You come in and we do a compliance gap assessment. Once the compliance gap assessment is done, we walk you through a three-step approach to assess, monitor, and remediate on your compliance journey. When that's finished, we give you real-time dashboards to make sure that you're compliant, keep you compliant, and keep you going. So by engaging in that model, we always make sure that the organization is ready for compliance when the auditor knocks on your door, right? So it's
Mm.
not leaving it to the end. So that's really how we do it.
So it's kind of like you're constantly monitoring. I mean, look, I mean, whether they admit it or not, right? A lot of companies are doing this checkbox thing once a year to make sure they're compliant. They're too busy. They don't know how, whatever the reasons are, right? Um,
Exactly.
but if you're just doing a once a year, check that box compliance, like you did an compliance today, and you're good. You look good today. You check that box. Maybe you get a signature from somebody. Why is that a risk problem?
So that's actually a dangerous mindset because if you think about it, compliance, like we all can agree on, is not a one and done deal,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
If you think about it, it's a moving target. Think of businesses. Businesses are not static. They change, they evolve. You hire people, you let people go. You may have business engagement, acquisition. So if you're not staying on top of compliance, chances are that organization is not compliant and they don't even know it. So that's why we build Protect Suite. It's ongoing compliance and monitoring that makes sure organization is always in the know of what's happening. We start out with, we schedule things like privileged access management. We look at lifecycle management of policies. We send reminders. So we really look for drifts in their compliance program and we make sure that they're ready and always set to go for an audit. So that's how we approach it. So this
Mm.
check mark approach, this year-end approach, making a project is very dangerous because you leave gaps in your security posture if you're doing that, right?
Yeah, and I think it's common sense, right? That
Yeah,
as you progress month after month, day after day, week after week, right? things change. You add employees, you acquire companies,
Exactly.
you change solutions. And if you're not monitoring how that impacts the overall, I guess, the overall picture, right,
Mhm.
you could be very quickly out of compliance. One of the things as well that a lot of MSPs love to do is have a kind of a visualization. Here's my customers, right? Here is how they're operating right now. Here is their solution. They look at their patch management and all these other things, and they want to see maybe some visibility of their real time. I guess would be the ideal of
Mhm.
their compliance structure.
Exactly.
Does your platform help them to do this?
And that's a good example that you just talked about there. So I like to talk about, and we at J-SAS like to talk about contextual insight. So you raise a good point around patch management, and the same can apply for vulnerability management. So those are security functions, right? So you go out and you say, okay, I'm patching my software or I'm remediating vulnerability. Those are security functions. What does that mean in the context of compliance? Well, it means that compliance don't really it's not really focusing on the functions itself. It's the quality of the service. If the organization has to make a declaration, which we call an OL, service level agreement, or operational levels agreement, to say any critical vulnerability, I commit to patching them within 24 hours. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the service organization declaration to their stakeholders about compliance and security. Your auditor is going to audit you against that declaration, right? So if you have a traditional patch management solution, showing them that, hey, I have patch management or I have a vulnerability scanner in place is not good enough. Are you remediating in a timely fashion? And that's where Protect Suite comes in because it provides that contextual insight to say, okay, Julian, your laptop had a CVE 0-day critical yesterday. Well, wait a minute. I noticed it was patched within 24 hours. So that's the real insight you need to
Mm.
provide to the auditor to make sure that you're satisfying your service level commitment about security to your stakeholders. So that's where the difference comes in. It's not focusing on the functions so
Mm.
much. You have it, everybody has tools.
Kind of the outcomes.
Exactly. Are you doing it the way you should be doing it to
Yeah,
protect?
and can you imagine if you didn't make that patch for a month?
Yeah,
Right, what would happen, right? So let's
exactly.
not talk about that, I guess.
Yeah.
Look, why should these MSPs care, period, about compliance? They've got so many things. They got AI, they got cybersecurity, they got managed service, they got so many things they're dealing with. Why should compliance bubble up to the top of their or to their priority list?
Yeah, well, I look at it from two points of view, and it's really for themselves. Obviously they need to prove they themselves have good security, so they would need some sort of a compliance for themselves.
Yeah.
But it's a new business opportunity, or it's an additional service they can offer to generate revenue. We talk about compliance as a service, and my co-founder Ryan talks a lot about the three-step approach to revenue generation. We've shown that MSP can create incremental revenue streams by offering compliance as a service and building that, tagging that on top of some of the security functions they're offering today. So we see this as a revenue opportunity, new revenue stream, or a potential for MSPs to grow their business in a different direction. So I think it's very important. And of course, the way we're going today, threats are getting more sophisticated, business is getting more sophisticated. You really cannot operate in a business environment without trust.
Mm.
So all these things, all these drivers, and we talk a lot about insurance. All these drivers are what's really forcing the trend of compliance. And I think MSPs are positioned to take advantage of this opportunity.
Well, I mean, if there's a couple of things there I'd add. Like one, for sure. I mean, if I'm an MSP, I want to
Yep,
prove that I'm compliant, right, with
definitely.
security and the stuff. And
Yep,
if I can't prove that myself is compliant, like what am I doing selling cybersecurity solutions to anybody,
precisely.
right?
Yep.
And the other part of it that thinking about the money part of it, right, the opportunity is
Mhm.
that as you're doing these compliance assessments and so on, what are you doing? You're actually demonstrating solutions that fills the gaps, which is revenue opportunities that the customer is going to have to say, well, you know what, I need to add this or that because
Exactly.
that's going to make me compliant. It's a much stronger, sales pitch, if you will, to
Exactly.
say you need to do this to be compliant then hey, you should do this because it's going to protect you.
Right.
I think there's a fine line there to argue, if you will. But anyways, they got to get out of their comfort zone, right, and get into this space.
Yeah.
So I get the point.
Yeah.
MSPs are looking at this right now. What is the first thing, Sase, that you want them or they could do?
I want them to treat it the way they're familiar with running business. So rather than do a security assessment, do add on a compliance assessment, do a compliance gap assessment with your customers. Start with minimal sort of concepts. With a compliance assessment, to your point earlier, it would show gaps. It may create opportunity for tools. I want to reference a conversation I had last week in talking to someone about compliance. This is more specifically in the context of ISO 27001. And they're embarking on that journey, and they didn't realize they have to have a pen test. So their tech team told them, yeah, we're going to pass. We are doing vulnerability scanning. What they didn't realize is that you need a pen test from the outside in and by an independent third party. Now,
Mm,
if you're an MSP and you're in that conversation and you're offering pen tests, all of a sudden it creates an additional revenue stream for you. So these, what I call windfalls, can come your way once you start opening up this conversation around compliance, because compliance leads to many things. Pen test is one of those things. More rigor around vulnerability management may be another one of those. Log management, centralized log. There's a plethora of things an
mm,
organization need to focus on, and they're doing some of that, but they may not be doing it in a structured manner.
right.
So you can even come in and remediate, okay, you're not doing monitoring properly. You're not doing log management. Let me centralize your log management for you. And by the way, your backup is not encrypted. There are so many opportunities, but
Mm,
structure it along the lines of compliance so you have an educated conversation. You're not making stuff up,
yeah.
right? So that's the way I would approach it with some of these MSPs.
So what I'm hearing here, Sise, is that it's kind of like a really good framework to helping, you manage all these moving parts, right?
Exactly,
That can
exactly.
be complex for your clients. So,
Yeah,
I mean, look, just for that fact alone of helping me to manage complexity
yeah,
is going to reduce my workload and
exactly.
save some of my mental stress. Um,
That's it.
so, Sise, you get the last word here, my friend. What do you want everybody to know about J-SAS and of course the website address for them to learn more?
Yeah, so we are jsas.com, but what I want them to know is that compliance doesn't have to be overwhelming. Approach it with the right solution. Look for a platform that can integrate with your stack. With Protect Suite, you get faster audit readiness, real security gains. We are a partner. We co-brand with you. We help you sell. We're there all the way with you. So pick the right partner. Just don't pick a platform, right? And
Mm,
try to do it like the enterprises are doing it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to turn compliance into a confident offering with revenue potential for MSPs and also for ourselves. So look
yeah.
us up, and we're jsas.com, and schedule, like we'll get you started, right?
There you go. Well, there you have it, folks. Look, compliance, I know for a fact that compliance is here to stay. I know it's going to get more than less, and it's going to become requirements. And if I look down the road, there are going to be legal arguments, and you better be able to prove that you're compliant and that your clients are compliant. And if you're not able to prove it, then it doesn't exist. So that's the reality. That's the way it is in our wonderful system that we have.
Yeah,
And my last advice is to start sooner rather than later, because if you get
always.
ahead of this curve, you're going to be way ahead of your competition. For me, it's a strong competitive advantage. So check it all out. Is it JSAS or J-slash.com?
Is j-ses.com -sas.com.
There
Yeah.
you go. All
That's
right. Thanks. Take care. Keep us posted.
awesome.